episode of Pit Lane Parley.
In the very last Pit Lane Parley Experience with Harding Steinbrenner Racing, we are joined by Phil Sparks, VP of Marketing for Harding Steinbrenner. So, Phil, first off, thanks for joining us this morning. I don't know what time it is anymore. The whole time zone thing is really throwing me off. Your role in marketing and your day-to-day job when you're not at the track is?
So, first off, thanks for having us and thanks for kind of following us this year. It's been awesome and helpful for us as a team, so appreciate that. Really, our focus is telling a story. What's the story of the IndyCar season? What's the story that this team has put together? And we've been really fortunate this year. We've had no shortage of storylines to be able to work with, especially with the youngest winning driver in IndyCar, the youngest owner in IndyCar. So all of those things kind of coming together. So my focus has been, how do we put those together to be able to tell that story, not only for you guys, but also for team partners and potential partners and looking towards the future.
How did you guys use Colton's win to kind of capitalize on that?
So, great question. And we all knew that Colton was going to be successful. I mean, you saw it right off the bat from the open test. I don't think any of us were quite prepared for it to happen as quickly as it did. So what was great about it is it proved right off the bat everything that we thought we had to work with. And so the ability to tell that story in a full circle came about in such a way that, we have this up and coming talent. Look, he just proved it right away. So for us to be able to tie that into our discussions with those potential partners, but then also to go back, if you remember, we did quite a bit of media in and around the team announcement when we announced, that we were merging with Steinbrenner and bring Colton. So the ability to go back to those people who were interested in that story the first time, that win gave us that night just to keep the storyline going. So we're really fortunate that kind of happened right at the time it did, and made a great segue right into the month of May as well.
Yeah, definitely. So looking at your resume, you worked for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the NHRA, you worked for IndyCar, and for the Harding Group. So now you're on the team side of things. It's just a little different. What's it like being on that side? Any pros and cons that you found in the past year or two?
Absolutely. So, I'm really fortunate. I've worked for some great organizations and have given me a lot of really awesome experiences. The team side, so I was an athlete in college, and one of the things that I found that I love about the team side is the competitive nature, which I didn't receive being on the sanctioning body or the promoter side. So, being able to go out there and say you won something, or you putting the car on pole, like, you take a sense of pride in that. And not that you didn't, like when I was at IMS and we finished 100th running, we had a huge sense of pride in what we had accomplished as an organization. But to go out there and be competing day in and day out for wins, it makes it a lot of fun, and it really engages you in a different way in the property.
I love it.
So, moving forward, how are you guys going to capitalize on your story?
So, one of the fortunate things for us, I think, as you look at storylines, going into the future years, a big one is youngest winner of the Indy 500. That's a huge opportunity that Colton has out there. I think we can continue to do a lot of good work on engaging George in kind of his growth in ownership and bringing kind of the business of the sport and continuing to further engage him in that. So that storyline will continue to develop for us. I think Colton, sophomore season, there's always a lot of ways that can go. So I think, that's going to be exciting for him, and seeing what he can really do with a year under a belt, and then us continuing to develop all of those storylines. And it's IndyCar, so there's always going to be something that's going to come out of left field at us too. So I want to make sure we're as prepared for that as we possibly can be.
So I'm going to go out of order here. Speaking of, George Steinbrenner, what's it like working for not only Mike Harding, but a Steinbrenner?
So, fortunate coming up the IndyCar and the IMS side to have been a part of kind of sports organizations that have big names in sport. So, got used to seeing that a little bit on the IMS and IndyCar side. Really fortunate, to have the time to be around George and kind of be a part of his entry into this. He's a great person, a lot of fun to be around. Really kind of engaged in what we've been working on and trying to do. So I feel very fortunate, to have had that opportunity and hopefully been able to, lend something to his growth. Although he'd probably tell you he wouldn't want to pay attention to much of what I've had to say. No, and as far as the Steinbrenner name goes, I mean, he lives up to that expectation. He expects to win. And he expects to be successful, and it drives you and it pushes you. So I couldn't be more fortunate. And as far as Mike goes, Mike has proven his success away from the racetrack. And I think, you look at what he has been able to accomplish in such a short time frame in terms of putting together an organization that has proven ourselves to be a winner on the racetrack. I'm fortunate that he thought of me and bringing me in when he was trying to put this together. So really quite honored to be a part of the organization.
So kind of sticking with the same storyline there, we talked to George specifically about his expectations at the beginning of the year, and obviously far exceeded those with the win. So how has it been after the win? Have the expectations changed?
So I don't think the expectations have changed. I think our response to our own performance is what has changed. So, and I look back at even last year before we had partnered with the Steinbrenners and partnered with ATEC to do the technology side of our business for us. For example, we would feel good about, making it out of the first round in qualifying. And I will tell you, if we do not make the Fast Six, there are a bunch of disappointed people. Yeah. Our expectation is we are a front runner. And I mean, the kid goes out there, he was fastest yesterday and he was fastest again this morning. And frankly, if we're not in the Fast Six and really even in the top three, probably going to end up disappointed about that again. So not a different expectation, maybe even set the bar higher for ourselves just because of the success we've been able to have.
So I will continue on the Colton Herta train here. What's it like, Colton being only, 19 or 20 now? 19, yeah. To see him, kind of grow as a driver throughout the year.
So really kind of amazing. We ran with him in Sonoma last year, and so that was our first engagement. And I know from a technical side and a crew side, the group loved working with him. From a commercial side, one of the most fun things for me is getting to understand his personality and kind of really everything he has to work with. And he can be a little quiet at first, but once you get him, he is a ton of fun to be around. He really is. So you look at that maturation, and then, on top of that, what he's done at the racetrack as an 18/19-year-old, I think it's turned a lot of heads. And I think, his dad would say he's turned everybody's head and kind of like, we got to pay attention to this because it's one of those things you don't want to miss, right? When we all look back, 10, 15 years from now, and it's like, you remember when Colton first showed up? Like, you want to pay really close attention because that's a storyline that's going to continue to develop over his career. So just excited to be here on the front end of it and can't wait to see it continue.
All right, so I've got two more questions to wrap it up here. From a marketing perspective, you're at a racetrack all weekend. What are you doing all weekend? Are you meeting with sponsors that are at the track? What's your main responsibility out here?
Sure. So, this weekend, our focus is helping kind of continue tell those stories we talked about earlier, and how do they help set us up for next year. So, yeah, there's some conversations and discussions going on about what do those partnerships look like for next year. One of the storylines, and we don't want to detract from the IndyCar Championship, but there's a chance Colton could end up with the Rookie of the Year championship as well. So kind of paying attention to how that develops, and obviously qualifying is going to be a big part of that for us. So, helping Liz kind of as much as I'm available to help her and make sure we're pushing that storyline, that focus on next year. And then also just kind of watching the other storylines develop around the series and figuring out how we do best to kind of elevate the tide for everybody and be a part of those as well. So a lot of observation, a lot of hand-holding with potentials, and frankly, just enjoying this new venue. I've never been here before after all my years in motorsports, so I've the opportunity to go around and see the views, especially the elevation changes. So it's a spectacular facility, excited to be here and just excited to see what this weekend holds.
Yeah, I said this morning talking to Jack Harvey, just driving in here, I was like, wow, I almost missed the turn a couple times because it was so impressive. Wrap it up with one more question here. Again, thanks for joining us this morning. Is the off season for somebody like you even busier than during does it slow down a little bit during the race season and then get, even more insane when you're trying to focus on 2020 probably next week?
So you're right on. It's this job never stops. And I would say that's very true of anybody in the sport, but it's, the next 2 months really start making and breaking the following year and even potentially the year after that, because you've spent a whole year getting people to the racetrack, getting them engaged with the property, with ownership, with the driver, really kind of loving the sport. And so now it's time to convert that energy into kind of how does that program work for next year. So it's, whether you're on the airplane, you're on the phone, whatever you're doing to make sure that they're still engaged for the following year from a partnership perspective. But then also we've got our work cut out for us to, set up those storylines for next year, because next year's going to be here before we know it. I mean, that open test is probably going to show up in February, and we're not very far away from that. So no, I'm not going home and lounging around the house.
Your feet up.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Well, thanks again for joining us. Best of luck this weekend, and look forward to seeing you in 2020.
Awesome. Thanks for having us, and look forward to kind of seeing what the rest of the weekend holds, and hoping for good weather. I don't think I have to hope real hard for it, but I think we'll be in good shape.
Thanks a lot, man.